Good day. I am J. Mark Lopez Bello, and in this video, I'm going to discuss the business and ecology. For those who are not familiar with the term ecology, it is defined as the study of relationships between living organisms, including humans, and their physical environment. Now, let's proceed to the introduction. It is everybody's responsibility to protect and preserve the environment. However, business should get bigger share of this responsibility mainly because, number one, business uses natural resources in the production of goods and services. And second, business disposes waste to the environment. And now here are the objectives. At the end of this chapter, the students are expected to examine the activities of business that are detrimental to the environment and ecosystem. Next is to understand our moral obligation to protect and preserve the environment as managers and business leaders. And also establish a strong justification by way of philosophizing our commitment to protect nature and Mother Earth. And lastly, analyze the dangers and detrimental effects of environmental abuse. Now, here are the content of this presentation. First, the dimensions of the ecological problems with its subtopics: population explosion, depletion of natural resources, pollution of the environment, and the destruction of the earth. And next is the traditional attitudes of business towards the environment, followed by environmental ethics, and then the moral and social obligation of business to the environment. So, first, let's talk about the dimension of ecological problem. Today's ecological problem which our world is currently facing is actually a severe problem that needs immediate action and attention. Now, let's talk about the first dimension of the ecological problem, the population explosion. The last few centuries saw the rapid increase of the world's population. In the year 1650, the world's population was only 0.5 billion. In the 1900s, it increased to 1.7 billion people. By 1960, the world's population grew to 3 billion, and for the year 2000 and beyond, the estimated world population will be more than 6 billion. And the main reason for this dramatic growth of the world's population is largely due to the improved medical care which lessened the rate of infant mortality and increased the lifespan of human beings. The population explosion is a problem that humanity has to deal with squarely because the Earth and its resources are limited. Moga explains that if human population continues to grow, the whole human race will soon come to a point where the Earth's space and resources will be used up. The result will be famine, poverty, and more population. And due to this situation, our planet will be unlivable for human beings. Next is the depletion of natural resources. The second dimension of the problem related to the ecology is the depletion of the Earth's natural resources. And this problem is due to the activities of business. Despite the fact that people benefit from the use of these resources and modern industries depend on the existence of these resources, humanity will one day go back to a life centered on small-scale farming. And the main reason for this technological regression is the depletion of our natural resources. Once these resources are gone, there is no way they can be replenished. For instance, aluminum was depleted in 2003, zinc in 1990, copper in 1993, nickel and iron and oil reserves are projected to be depleted in 2025, and other resources are projected to be used up in 100 years. And now, we have the pollution of the environment. The third dimension of our ecological problem is the increased pollution of the environment. The waste of our ever-increasing population and from our modern industrial lifestyle are destroying the land, air, and water in the environment. According to DENR, 60% of air pollution in Metro Manila comes from motor vehicles. And of 400 major rivers in the Philippines, 50 are heavily polluted and 10 are virtually dead. So, Metro Manila, said to hold more than 10 million people, produces about 3,000 tons of garbage daily. According to Father Moga, the air, sea, and land that used to bring health, joy, and vitality to the human no longer do so. With the destruction of the ozone layer, we now fear the sun. As a result of the ever-increasing pollution, Earth is rapidly becoming unsuitable for decent human living. And now we have the destruction of the Earth. The fourth dimension of our ecological problem is found in the destruction of the Earth. In the Philippines alone, only 20% of our forests remain intact. And out of 500,000 hectares of mangrove in 1920s, only 130,000 hectares remain today. And the data also shows that more than 90,000 square kilometers of our land are in such distressing condition because of the soil erosion that can no longer support cultivation, farming, and gardening. And now, let's move on to the traditional attitudes of business towards the environment. Business, with no doubt, has contributed greatly to the destruction of the earth and our environment. The creation of new products and services to satisfy the needs and wants of customers, for instance, do not come without any price to pay. The depletion of our natural resources to produce something is one example. Although business has in one way or another helped the promotion of the quality of life of people, it has, on the other hand, contributed to the destruction of earth and pollution of our environment. Now, here are the traditional beliefs of businessmen vis-a-vis the environment in W. Shaw 1999, Business Ethics, Boston, USA, Wadsworth Publishing Incorporated, page 397. So, first is that business people for the long time believed that the world is free and unlimited. Because of this paradigm, businessmen found a justification to exploit and abuse the earth without regard for the next generations. And next is that the businessman's pursuit for private interest at the expense of common good has created an imbalance between individual gain and social cost. For example, some companies do not treat their chemical waste properly. Instead, they throw them anywhere or in the rivers. These actions obviously saves the production cost, but due to this, it makes a river unsafe. In this case, private cost is minimized, but the social costs are increased. And now, let's talk about the environmental ethics. Every human being has the right to a livable environment. Without this natural habitat, human beings and other species will no longer survive for a long time. It is also our duty to ensure the survival of the next generations. Although man as a creature is privileged to live in a decent environment, ironically, he is also the only creature who has been tampering with the environment. For this reason, man has a paramount duty to arrest the total degradation of the environment and to preserve Mother Earth. Ramon Agapay, in his books Ethics and the Filipino, defines environmental ethics as the study of man's moral obligation to preserve the environment and natural order of things. Thus, In the preservation and protection of the environment, man has three things to imbibe. So, number one, man has moral obligation to preserve the environment. The idea of moral obligation in this context is the perceived duty to perform an act as good and to avoid the act as an evil. And second, man has a primary duty to take care of the environment. This duty is based on the assumed truth that man's survival is interrelated with that of his environment. Man is a part of a complex web of interrelationship and interdependence of all entities in the environment that we call ecosystem. A destruction of one part of ecosystem affects the relationship of these entities and eventually creates an imbalance in the ecosystem. And so, this is why man has to protect and take care of the environment. Lastly, man must submit to the demands of natural law and must not intervene carelessly with the work of nature. Thus, man must fit his technology with ecology. The duty to preserve the environment has also been reiterated by the Catholic Church in the encyclical Ecology in Asia in 1999 by the late Pope John Paul II. To them, it is the duty of Christians and all who look to God as the Creator to protect the environment by resorting a sense of reverence for the whole of God's creation. It is the Creator's will that man should treat nature not as a ruthless exploiter, but as an intelligent and responsible administrator. The protection of the environment is not only a technical question, it is also above all an ethical issue. All have a moral duty to care for the environment, not only for their own good, but also for the good for the future generation. And finally, the last part of this presentation, which is the moral and social obligations of business to the environment. Business depends on the natural environment for its operations, specifically for its energy, raw materials, and waste disposal. The natural environment, in turn, is affected by the industrial and agricultural activities of business. Since business is dependent on the natural environment for its operations and obviously for profit, business must take the lead in the effort to protect and preserve the environment to which it is totally dependent. So, according to Dr. Jose Mario B. Maximiano, there are three factors that must be considered to be socially responsible for the environment. Number one, business cannot use with impunity the different categories of creatures and resources, whether living or inanimate, simply as they will. And second, business must realize that the natural resources are limited. Our natural resources, once depleted, are not renewable. Business must comprehend the evil effects of industrial development on the quality of life. The direct and indirect result of industrialization is the pollution of the environment with serious consequences on the health and safety of the population. So, Maximiano also enumerates the reasons for social responsibility of business towards the environment. Number one, business is socially responsible for the environment because it is an important part of the macroecological system. Business is the part of the society and at the same time part of the mother nature, such that any separation made between business and nature is artificial and false. And next is that business depends on the natural environment for its operations. For example, energy, raw materials, and waste disposal. It is socially irresponsible for business to destroy the very resources that they depend on. And then, business must also must take into account the ethical issue when it relates with environment. For example, short-term profit versus long-term gain of the environment. And that's all for this presentation. Thank you.